Golf Echo to BX, very, very heavy smoke is coming from the underground. They're going to need assistance from a lot of officers. Over.
Sensor received.
It was a fraction of a second when I realized that that's it, Mariella, this is your last moment. You're gonna die here like a rat.
The jets we were using were turning to steam before hitting the objective. It was just so hot, I just couldn't believe a fire of this magnitude could start in such a short period of time.
I remember stopping and looking back and hearing screams that I've never heard. It was from hell. You could hear people screaming through the flames. It's terrible.
Wednesday, the 18th of November. The Reagan administration is this morning accused of having undermined the American Constitution so that the arms to Iran are there. There is a claim by Iran that an Iraqi air raid Good morning, this is Horizon Radio, your latest
Since leaving the Coldstream Guards in 1984, Stephen Hanson worked for the British Transport Police. In 1987, he was living in Milton Keynes with his wife and 3 children.
Looking back, it was an ordinary day. I got up, I washed, shaved, and got ready for work, as usual. I had to catch the 9 o'clock train from where I live in Milton Keynes, which got me into Euston about 15 minutes prior to my shift, which was 11 o'clock that morning.
PC Hanson was part of a 6-man mobile unit whose duties included patrolling underground and mainline stations around King's Cross. In 1987, King's Cross was the busiest station on the London Underground. 5 separate services, the Northern, Piccadilly, Victoria, Metropolitan and Circle lines, connect to 3 British rail stations via a labyrinth of tunnels, escalators and stairs on different levels. 2.5 million journeys are recorded every day on the London Underground, and at peak times 100,000 passengers pass through King's Cross alone. One of those passengers on the 18th of November 1987 was 20-year-old Mariella Santello, who was showing her boyfriend Marco the sights of London.
The day before the fire, my boyfriend had come from Italy to spend my birthday with me. You know, we hadn't seen each other for a few months and we wanted to be together. And, you know, it kind of gave me this surprise. Well, I knew it was coming, but he kind of managed to come to London for my birthday.
Another passenger that day was Kwasi Afari Minta, a musician from Ghana who had lived in London for 6 years. He had decided to spend the day listening to music in his favourite record shop in North London.
I had a day off, so I went down to Golders Green to a record shop. When I got down there, they were a bit busy, so I had to take a bit of a time for me to hang around before they really got to serve me. And the guy who was supposed to do it wasn't even around. I had to wait till 5:30, 6-ish before everything was settled. And so I didn't leave there till about 6 or 6:30.
As Kwasi listened to music and Mariella showed Marco around London, PC Hanson and his unit patrolled the capital's underground and mainline stations. For all of them, it had been an ordinary day. After the evening's rush hour, PC Hanson's unit returned to base at King's Cross. They split off into pairs to continue their patrol. P.C. Hansen entered the mainline station, and his colleagues went down into the underground. The numbers of people passing through the station had now dropped from its rush hour peak of 30,000 passengers an hour to under 10,000. It was sometime after 7 o'clock that somebody, on the ascending number 4 escalator of the Piccadilly line, dropped a match on the wooden treads, which fell through a gap in the skirting and set light to the grease, dust and debris that had built up on the running tracks underneath.
There was a small operations cabin to one side which had about 4 television monitors and one-way mirror. So we could sit in there, watch the monitors, and at the same time watch the people going past without them realising we were sat there. And while we were sat in there, that we saw these chaps coming off the escalator, then looking around to see there was a problem down there. So we both went out round to it, and I went down the escalator, as it was stopped at that time, to about a third of the way down it from the top, and saw the fire coming out from between the treads.
Yes, we've got an escalator on fire on the LT King's Cross, on the escalator going down to the Piccadilly line.
Yeah, you want fire service over?
Apparently so at the moment, we've got flames coming up from the escalator.
Are you braking? Are you requesting?
Apparently the flames are coming from the machinery underneath.
Soho Red Watch received the call at 7:36. 2 pumps and a turntable were dispatched immediately.
I went over to the Piccadilly line and I looked down the escalator. P.C. Babington was there, and we both tried to put the flames out. And we didn't realise at the time we were trying to put out 11-foot flames, because these flames were starting from the machine room.
Below, P.C. Babington diverted passengers away from the fire and towards the safety of the Victoria Line escalators. Above, in the ticket hall, P.C. Hansen erected barriers to close off the station and to direct people coming up the escalators to safety.
So I closed all the barriers apart from one, which was on the left-hand side of the booking hall. And as people were still arriving from the bottom Victoria Line, I filtered them through there.
However, the officers had lost contact with each other, as their radios could not operate underground. Kwasi had now left Golders Green on the Northern Line and was en route to King's Cross, where he intended to get a connecting Victoria Line train. As he waited, on the platform, he sensed something was wrong.
I've been using the station for a long, long time. I knew when there's something different I could smell there's something else, and you could hardly breathe easily. You know, you could choke easily on trying to breathe too much in it, something like that. The smoke was getting thicker, it was getting uncomfortable, it was getting hotter, and I had a premonition that something was going to happen badly, because I'd been to small fires before on underground, and it had quickly been put out by police officers at the time, but this one seemed to be worsening drastically.
The decision had been made to evacuate the station and for trains to pass through King's Cross without stopping. Mariella and Marco were on a train that didn't get the message. Their train stopped.
I wouldn't normally gone through King's Cross, but that evening, because in the back of my mind I'd wanted to try a new route to see whether it would have been quicker, instinctively I just decided to get off the train and change to King's Cross.
I heard a train, I couldn't believe it. I heard doors opening. It was an incredible situation. There was people standing on the escalator with no haste in their faces or anything. So I shouted down to them and says, come on, hurry up, come on. This is an emergency situation. Make your way out of the station as quickly as possible.
The first pump arrived at King's Cross in 4 minutes, and station officer Colin Townsley went down immediately to assess the situation. The other 2 appliances from Red Watch pulled up moments later.
When we arrived, there was nothing going on. We parked up top. There was people milling out, there's people going in and out the underground. Nobody stopping people going in, nobody stopping people coming out or anything. It was just normal situation. The crews had already gone down. I know from past experience that it's easy to get lost walking around the underground. So I decided that the government wouldn't want us walking around, we'd stay there until we needed.
Some firemen with their shiny costume came down and said, we should all go up the escalator. Everybody up the escalator. The way they went about it, didn't give us a chance to think about what was really happening. It was sort of an order. See, go up the escalator, go up the escalator.
When eventually we tried to go up the Piccadilly line escalator, we saw two policemen moving people away from the escalator. Even at that moment, I thought, I didn't get worried, and the policemen didn't seem worried or alarmed in any way. So why should we?
Mariella, Marco and Kwasi were now travelling up the same escalator.
Halfway up, I realized there was this man up there calling everybody this way, everybody this way. So I became a bit curious. I wanted to know what was actually happening.
What was happening was that the adjoining Piccadilly line escalator had become a blazing inferno and was sending smoke and fumes up into the booking hall where Kwasi, Mariella and Marco were now heading.
It was then that I looked towards the Piccadilly line and I saw this enormous fireball arrive in the booking office area. It gave a noise, like a loud, whooshy type of noise that was frightening. It was enormous in its entirety. It just covered the whole booking office area in seconds.
Just as I stepped off the escalator, the fireball hit this man and he fell down, grappling with this, struggling to get away from this fireball, and he never made it.
The speed it went at was tremendous. 1 minute 1 second it was at the right-hand side where the Piccadilly line escalator was, and next minute it was backing onto us.
And I was hugging Marco and talking to him. By the time we reached the top of the escalator, this is when I turned around and I faced this absurd scene, like a real nightmare.
This was followed by a second bang that picked me up from where I was and threw me several distance away from where I was, about 20, 25 yards or something like that. And I didn't know what happened next. Next thing happened was that I had picked myself from the floor and I was trying to run away from the scene. All you could see was a fire, up on the ceiling, catching up on the stretchers in the middle of the hall. You could see people were really struggling. There were people all on fire.
The majority of the passengers just frozen, but there was one Pacific passenger that actually ran past me. And as she ran past me, I remember her glasses melting on her face.
You can't really explain what kind of it was because, unless you put yourself in the oven and cook yourself, you're not going to understand what it means.
As the fire intensified and more pumps arrived, the first casualty was brought out. Red Watch's station officer and governor, Colin Townsley, who died while trying to save a badly burnt victim. The firemen now realized that this was no ordinary fire.
Everywhere was alight. I just found this incredible because I've been to underground fires many times, but it's concrete everywhere, it's tiles everywhere, there's nothing to burn. Yet the whole place was alight.
All I saw was a small gap between the flames and the floor next to the exit of the ticket barrier. And in my mind, all I could think of is, the only way out is in the open air, is through those flames.
What I did, I stood up and I made a dash and I jumped over the actual barrier that I'd closed. It was that hot, about what I touched, my hand had actually stuck to the rails of the actual barrier itself.
Ambulances to King's Cross urgently. There are many people seriously burnt, I understand.
I took hold of a person that was on the floor. I don't know whether it was male or female, and I tried to pull it along with me. And actually, it was at that time that I noticed the extent of my actual injuries that I'd suffered myself. The hands had literally melted, the skin had melted off, and my hair on my face seemed like it was on fire.
I turned to the left because there was more space and I could easily run, and I thought that would be the best way for me to get out of King's Cross. So I went to the left. The first one that I went to was the way out that comes up onto the bus stop area, Euston Road. But I wasn't lucky. It's been blocked with structures and I couldn't get out. It looked like a furnace, and there's no way I could even touch it to say move it, the structures out of it so I could just come across. But I couldn't do it. So I went over to the next one in the corner. It was the same thing. And the third one was also the same. So I had to turn around again and head straight for where I've just come from.
There's no reason why I took the left instead of the right. If I had taken the right, I would have, died in the ticket. So instead, instinctively turned left. And next thing, I stumbled against some steps.
I looked towards the circulating area where I saw the Bureau de Change. And in the intermittent light, from the fire, I saw a chap trying to get out. And I went towards the Bureau de Change and I looked inside. And at this time, the heat was tremendous. It was so hot. And I could see him trying to get out the door, and he looked at me and I looked at him square in the eyes, and his eyes were wide open with real fear. Never seen anything like it. I couldn't do nothing about it, and he couldn't get out. I actually crashed my fists against the glass to try to break it, but it was security glass and it wouldn't break. And the heat was causing explosions, i.e. tiles were exploding on the walls. There was shop windows blowing up, there was glass flying everywhere. And I actually had a piece of glass lodged in the back of my hand, which I later pulled out. It was then self-survival, basically. What went through my mind was my family, my children, and I had to live for them. My body was burning, my hands were burning, and if I would have stayed a second longer, I would have died.
If I had to get out of King's Cross, then I really had to think quickly and do something. But there was nothing I could do. I was very tired and desperate, and I hung out there in the corner and was saying that, well, look, God, if it's the way that I've got to die, let it be. But if I have to live, then you better get me out of here, because, well, I've tried my best and I've not been able to achieve anything.
The fire brigade are having great difficulty, over.
As the dead and injured continued to be brought to the surface, Kwasi faced an agonizing decision.
Between me and where I thought there was a bit more hope, there was all this fire all over again. But I knew that was the only chance I had if I had to get out alive. And I walked through it.
Kwasi walked through a wall of flame, which brought him down to the safety of the Circle Line platform.
Some ladies came up from behind me and said, "Oh God, you are on fire." I was surprised they were saying that. I thought I was escaped and I've come through, and I was a bit delighted that I've made it, you see what I mean? But suddenly being told that, look, you are on fire, was a bit of a surprise to me.
I stopped for a second. I turned behind, and I thought, shall I go inside, try to get Marco? I looked behind me and I couldn't see him coming. And I thought, I knew that if I had gone back, I wouldn't have made it again. And also, if I had gone back, I couldn't have found him. From what I was told afterwards, when I regained consciousness in hospital, they say that they found Marco's body in the ticket hall somewhere. So this probably means that he actually followed me, and like me, when he faced the black thick smoke. You know, he couldn't, he just stayed there, he died there, he couldn't find any way out.
Luckily, I could find my way around in that place in the dark. I got on the hands and knees and I crawled out of that place towards a passageway where breathing was better, there was more air, and I stopped halfway there and I looked back and I could hear these screams that was like from hell. I just made my way towards this light and actually made it to the steps, and I remember climbing up a few steps, and I felt really weak, and it was then I noticed a police officer was dragging me up. I was so relieved. I could not believe I was alive. I'd been that close to death and stared it right in the face, and I actually survived. So although I was in a lot of pain, I felt good that I'd survived. But I knew I'd left a lot of dead people down there.
P.C. Hansen and Mariella were eventually taken to the intensive care unit at University College Hospital. Kwasi was finally evacuated on a crowded commuter train to the next station along the line. From there, he was taken to St. Bartholomew's Hospital. At 9:48, almost 2 hours later, the fire was brought under control. The cost was dear. The final death toll was 31. It was one of the most ferocious fires ever attended in London, and one in which Red Watch lost its governor, Colin Townsley. Since the fire, hundreds of millions of pounds have been spent across the underground network on improving safety. The London Underground say a fire like this could never happen again. Little trace of that night now remains in the brightly refurbished booking hall at King's Cross. Just a plaque by the exit in memory of the 31 people who died there. Kwasi was 34 years old. He was in hospital for 6 months following the fire and had to wear a surgical mask for over a year. He underwent plastic surgery for 5 years. Although unable to play the guitar as he used to, he still continues to sing and compose his music.
What I think this happening to me, it's better happen to me if it been any of my friends or the people that I know around me. It would have hurt me more, because I know some of them might not be able to survive the way I've been through.
Mariella was 20 and was looking forward to a career as a singer. She suffered 45% burns, was unconscious for 4 weeks, and underwent extensive plastic surgery for 3 months. Her lungs were carbonized, her voice irreparably damaged, her hope of a singing career over.
Is it worthwhile after having gone through that much pain, you know, living a life of bitterness? You know, I think that after all that pain, I might as well try to be very happy, and I think I'm a fairly happy person.
P.C. Stephen Hansen suffered serious burns to his hands and face. He spent 4 weeks in the burns unit undergoing skin grafts and a further 1.5 years recuperating with counselling and therapy.
I know it was my duty as a police officer to help people. I was in a position of authority and in a position where people look at you for help. I do feel very proud of what I did. I didn't at the time, I must admit. I felt very guilty. I didn't do more. But now I feel very proud of what I did.
In 1989, he received the Queen's Award for Gallantry. However, 6 weeks after returning to patrol duties, he was called to another incident at King's Cross, which brought back the full horror of the fire. He resigned from the force shortly afterwards.